Your paycheck just landed. You didn't do anything dramatic. You didn't jump out of your chair. You didn't scream or celebrate. You just opened your banking app. For a few quiet seconds, everything felt lighter. Like the pressure eased. Like you could finally breathe again. And then, almost immediately, your mind started racing. Rent, bills, that thing you forgot to pay last month. The weekend plans you already said yes to. That small voice showed up right on time and said, "Okay, let's be careful this time." You've heard that voice before. It always shows up on payday, and it always disappears a few days later. By the end of the week, you're standing in your kitchen, staring at the fridge, wondering how money that felt so real just vanished again. Not because you did anything crazy, not because you went on a shopping spree, just life. And if you're honest with yourself, the most confusing part isn't that the money is gone. It's that you don't remember actually choosing where it went. Most people think this happens because they don't make enough. That's the story we tell ourselves. If I just earned a little more, this wouldn't be a problem. If my paycheck was bigger, I'd finally be able to save. If life wasn't so expensive, I'd be fine. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people never look at. The problem isn't how much you make. The problem is what you do first. Because payday isn't neutral. It's not just money arriving in your account. Payday is a decision moment. They treat their paycheck like something to react to, instead of something to direct. They let the loudest, most urgent things grab the money first. And whatever's quiet, whatever's distant, whatever doesn't scream today, gets ignored. Your future doesn't send push notifications. Your savings don't demand attention. Your older self doesn't text you reminders. So they always lose. And then we blame ourselves. We say we're bad with money. We say we lack discipline. We say we're just not financial people. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is much simpler and much more human. You're doing the easiest thing first and avoiding the hardest thing. Everything else feels lighter afterward. Not because the day gets easier, but because your brain relaxes once the worst part is handled. Money works the same way, but almost nobody treats it that way. On payday, most people don't deal with the hardest financial task first. They deal with the most visible one, the most urgent one, the one that feels safest in the moment. They pay everyone else first. Landlord, utilities, subscriptions, conveniences. And then they tell themselves, "I'll save whatever's left." That sentence feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like a plan. But it's not. It's a delay. And delayed decisions almost always turn into avoided decisions. This is why saving feels impossible. Not because you don't care. Not because you're lazy. But because you've trained your money to disappear before it ever had a purpose. Think about this for a moment. What's the first thing your money does when it arrives? Not what you intend to do with it. What it actually does. Does it move automatically towards something important? Or does it just sit there, waiting to be pulled in every direction? Most people never answer that question honestly, because answering it means admitting something uncomfortable. It means realizing that your future self is always last in line. And the longer that pattern continues, the heavier everything starts to feel. You feel anxious even when you get paid. You feel guilty when you spend. You feel behind even when nothing is technically wrong. That constant background stress isn't about money. It's about control, or more accurately, the lack of it. When you don't decide what happens first, everything else decides for you. And here's the part nobody tells you. You don't fix this by trying harder. You don't fix it with motivation. You fix it by changing the order. One small shift. One uncomfortable decision made early instead of avoided late. The people who eventually feel calm about money aren't smarter. They aren't more disciplined. They aren't living some secret, perfect life. They just learn it to handle the most important thing before it had a chance to be ignored. They stopped asking, "What can I afford after everything else?" and started asking, "What deserves to be handled first?" That's it. That's the entire difference. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because you'll realize something quietly powerful. Your paycheck was never the problem. The timing was. In the next part, we're going to slow this down and look at the exact everyday behaviors that keep this cycle going, even for people who genuinely want to do better. Not with numbers, not with rules, but with real life. Most money problems do not start with bad intentions. They start on normal days, quiet days, busy days. You wake up, you check your phone, you see the deposit notification. Nothing special happens. You tell yourself today will be different. You will be more mindful. You will not let the money slip away. Then life starts moving. A bill reminder pops up. You pay it because it feels responsible. You buy groceries because you need food. You put gas in the car because you have to get to work. None of these feel like mistakes. They feel like adulthood. Then there are the small things. The coffee because you are tired. The quick food order because you are busy. Again, nothing feels wrong. You are not reckless. You are not careless. You are just responding. By the time you pause and think about saving, the month already feels full. The money already feels spoken for. The idea of moving money into savings now feels risky. What if something comes up? What if you need it later? What if you regret locking it away? So you wait. You tell yourself you will check again next week. You tell yourself you will save once things calm down. But things never calm down. There is always another reason, another expense, another obligation. Weeks pass like this. Then one day you check your balance and feel that familiar drop in your stomach. Not panic, not shock, just disappointment. You start replaying the month in your head. You try to remember where it all went. You remember some of it. You forget most of it. And that is the frustrating part. You did not spend the money on something memorable. You did not trade it for a meaningful experience. You traded it for maintenance, bills, convenience, avoiding discomfort. It feels like running on a treadmill. A lot of movement, no progress. This is where people usually turn against themselves. They say things like, I am bad with money. I have no self-control. I should know better by now. But notice something important. You are not failing because you are careless. You are failing because you are tired. Tired of juggling. Tired of deciding. Tired of constantly choosing between today and tomorrow. Money decisions stack up quickly. Every swipe, every tap, every yes. Your brain does not treat these as important decisions. It treats them as survival tasks. Pay this so nothing breaks. Buy this so life keeps moving. Handle this now so you can relax later. The problem is that later never arrives. There is always another now. This is why budgeting feels exhausting to so many people. It feels like restriction. It feels like punishment. It feels like you are constantly saying no. And when you are already stressed, saying no all day feels impossible. So instead you avoid the whole thing. You let money flow out naturally. You hope awareness will be enough. It rarely is. Another common pattern shows up here. People separate saving from real life. Saving becomes something you do when things are perfect, when there are no surprises, when income is higher, when stress is lower. In other words, saving becomes imaginary because real life is never perfectly calm. There is always a reason to delay. The car makes a noise. Work feels unstable. A family expense appears. You want one small thing that makes the week easier. So saving stays theoretical. You believe in it. You support the idea. You just never get around to it. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop expecting progress. You stop thinking long term. You focus on getting through the month. Your financial world shrinks. You are no longer asking, where do I want to be in 5 years? You are asking, can I make it to the next paycheck? That shift is heavy, not because you are irresponsible, but because you never created space to think differently. Every decision is reactive. Every choice is urgent, and urgency kills intention. When everything feels important, nothing truly is. This is why advice like just save more does not work. It ignores the emotional reality. It ignores fatigue. It ignores stress. It ignores how many decisions you already make every day. You do not need more pressure. You need fewer decisions. Right now, money shows up and immediately demands attention from everyone else. Bills shout. Convenience whispers. Habits pull. Your future stays silent. so it loses again and again. And the worst part is that this pattern makes you feel behind even if you are doing everything you were told to do. You pay your bills, you show up to work, you try to be responsible, yet something still feels off. That feeling is not failure, it is misalignment. Your actions are not matching your values because the system you are using makes that impossible. Not in a technical way, not in a complicated way, in a human way. Once you understand that, you will stop blaming yourself and start seeing exactly where the shift needs to happen. To understand why money keeps slipping away, you have to understand how your brain works under pressure. Your brain is not designed to build wealth. It is designed to keep you safe today. That is not a flaw. That is survival. When money enters your account, your brain immediately scans for threats, bills that must be paid, problems that could appear, discomfort that can be avoided. Anything that feels immediate gets priority. Anything that feels distant gets ignored. Your future does not feel urgent. Your future does not feel real. Your future does not feel like it needs attention right now. Today does. This is why people say they value saving but do not actually save. The value is real. The behavior is not. Because values live in the thinking part of the brain. Spending decisions happen in the emotional part. And the emotional part always wins when things feel uncertain. Another important thing is how your brain labels money. When money arrives, it feels flexible. It feels open. It feels available. But once money is assigned, it feels gone. Bills feel like loss. Comfort feels like relief. Saving feels like loss too, at least at first. You move money away. You cannot see it. You cannot touch it. Your brain treats that as deprivation. So it resists. Not because saving is bad, but because your brain hates delayed rewards. A coffee now feels better than security later. Not logically, emotionally. This is also why people say they will save whatever is left. That sentence protects your feelings. It lets you believe you are responsible without feeling deprived. But your brain knows a secret. There is always something left to spend. Something small. Something justifiable. Something that feels earned. So the leftover never survives. Another psychological trap is mental separation. People separate money into categories without realizing it. Bill money, fun money, emergency money, saving money. The problem is that saving money usually has no clear identity. It is just leftover money. And leftovers never feel important. Bills have deadlines. Fun has emotion. Emergencies have fear. Saving has none of these unless you give it meaning. So it gets ignored. There is also the illusion of control. When money sits in your main account, you feel in control. You tell yourself you can move it later. That flexibility feels comforting. But flexibility is dangerous. Because flexibility means decision-making. And decision-making drains energy. By the end of the day, your brain wants easy choices. Spend is easy. Delay is hard. So flexibility turns into leakage. Another reason this happens is optimism bias. You genuinely believe things will be calmer later. You believe next month will be easier. You believe expenses will slow down. You believe you will feel more disciplined. This belief is comforting. It is also usually wrong. Life does not get quieter. It gets fuller. So waiting for the perfect moment becomes permanent delay. There is also identity involved. Many people do not see themselves as someone who saves. They see saving as something responsible people do. Older people, richer people, more organized people. So saving feels like pretending to be someone else. Spending feels like being yourself. Until that identity shifts, behavior will not stick. This is why motivation fades. You try for a few weeks. You feel restricted. You feel tense. Then you return to what feels natural. Your brain chooses comfort over consistency. This is not weakness. It is wiring. Your brain is extremely good at protecting you from discomfort. It is terrible at protecting your future self, especially when the future self feels like a stranger. Think about it. When you imagine yourself years from now, does that person feel real? Or does it feel like an idea? Most people feel more empathy for strangers than for their future self. So they prioritize today without realizing it. This is why the hardest part of money is not math. It is distance. Distance in time, distance in emotion, distance in consequence. When consequences are far away, behavior does not change. Not because people are stupid, but because urgency drives action. So the key is not discipline. The key is making the future feel immediate. That is where most systems fail. They ask you to resist temptation every day. They ask you to say no repeatedly. They ask you to be vigilant forever. That is exhausting. And eventually you stop. What actually works is removing the decision. When something happens, automatically your brain relaxes. No debate, no negotiation, no guilt. This is why people who succeed with money often say it feels boring. Boring is good. Boring means your emotions are not involved. Another important psychological piece is order. The first action sets the tone. If the first thing you do with money is spend, your brain stays in spending mode. If the first thing you do is protect your future, your brain shifts. It says something different about who you are. You are not reacting. You are deciding. This is where the real shift begins. Not with sacrifice, with sequence. Your brain loves patterns. Once a pattern is established, it stops resisting. So when they try to reverse it, everything feels wrong. It feels tight. It feels restrictive. It feels scary. But that feeling is temporary. It is the sound of an old pattern breaking. And here is the part that matters most. You do not need to become a different person. You do not need to care more. You do not need to learn complicated systems. You need to change when the decision happens, earlier instead of later, before emotions get involved, before fatigue sets in, before life starts pulling. Once you understand this, you stop asking, why am I bad with money? You start asking, why did I wait so long to decide? Not dramatically, not painfully, quietly. When you wait to deal with money until the end of the month, something quiet happens. Nothing breaks. Nothing explodes. No alarm goes off. Life continues. And that is why it is dangerous. Because the cost of waiting does not show up as pain. It shows up as time. Every month you tell yourself you will start later, you are not standing still. You are moving backward without noticing. Not in a dramatic way. In a slow, almost invisible way. Think about it like this. When you do not decide where your money goes, it still goes somewhere. It just goes without intention. That means the opportunity to build something disappears quietly. You do not feel the loss. You feel normal. And normal becomes the trap. Months turn into years like this. You get used to always catching up. You get used to having just enough. You get used to the background stress. And because you are surviving, you assume you are doing okay. But surviving is not the same as progressing. The real cost is not the money you spent. It is the momentum you never built. When money never moves toward your future early, it never has time to grow. It never has time to stack. It never has time to compound. Time is the part you can never replace. You can earn more money later. You can cut expenses later. You can adjust lifestyle later. You cannot go back and give your money more time. That is the invisible cost. And it shows up emotionally before it shows up financially. It shows up as feeling behind, as feeling anxious even when things are fine, as feeling like everyone else has a plan except you. It shows up as avoiding bank apps, as delaying conversations about money, as pushing thoughts about the future away. Not because you do not care, but because thinking about it feels heavy. And the longer this goes on, the heavier it gets. What makes this especially frustrating is that the fix is not extreme. You do not need to cut all joy. You do not need to track every detail forever. You do not need to become obsessed. You need one early decision. One moment where you say this part comes first. You stop seeing saving as something you fail at. You start seeing it as something you already handled. That creates relief. Relief is powerful. When your future is handled early, the rest of your spending feels lighter. You are no longer stealing from tomorrow. You are choosing today with permission. That is the peace people are really after. Not luxury, not excess. Peace. The peace of knowing that even if life gets messy, you are moving in the right direction. The peace of knowing that your money has a job before emotions get involved. The peace of not constantly negotiating with yourself. And here is the part that matters. You do not need to fix everything at once. You do not need to look 10 years ahead. You just need to stop postponing the most important decision. Paying yourself first is not about being strict. It is about being kind to the version of you that comes later. The version of you who will be tired. The version of you who will want options. The version of you who will thank you for acting early. When you handle the hardest thing first, the rest of the month feels calmer. Not easier, calmer. And calm is what allows consistency. Consistency is what builds progress. Progress is what changes everything quietly. You do not need motivation for this. You do not need perfect conditions. You need one small shift in order, earlier instead of later. That is it. That is the rule almost nobody follows. And once you do, you will wonder why you ever did it any other way.